For joining us. I'm Chris Henry. This is part of our best practices series, and we've done a number of these. I'll go through this. It's a chance for us to share what we've seen and interview. Typically, we interview our partners. Today, because as BizSpeed's rolling out our auto routing, we're going to interview our VP of engineering as well as Doug, our COO, and talk about auto routing, not just ours, but generally what we've seen from an industry standpoint. So I'll go through introductions, talk about the goals of this. This is part of our best practices series. Like I mentioned, February this month, we're doing auto routing and optimization. Last year, plus we hosted a number. So we did NetSuite, we did a rental fuel management, we did iRely, M2X for route optimization, which is similar. We've done fuel supply management with commodity trading and risk management. If you want to see any of these, you can reach out to Charlie. Charlie's on, he's our sales director and coordinates with our marketing team to make sure that you'll get the replays of those and the summaries of those. So I'm Chris Henry. I'm the host. I'm not going to do a lot of talking today like normal, but for each one of our panelists, we've got Matthew Belk and Doug Hollowell. Like I mentioned, you want to tell us a little about your background because it's BizSpeed. One of you, Doug, I guess, can do the company overview and tell us about your role. So you want to start, Doug?
Sure. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. I'm Doug Hollowell. I'm the COO here at BizSpeed. So my role is to oversee our project implementation teams and activities, as well as our customer success group. A little background on BizSpeed. We're based here in Atlanta. We started in 2001, and in fact, March 1st of this year will be our 25th anniversary in business. So
Nice.
coming up on a big anniversary. We started off doing lubes in 2006, working with an optimization partner and doing integration to ERP. And since then, we have migrated our business to exclusively work with bulk and package delivery. And since then, we've expanded to include transport fuel, tank wagon fuel, propane, home heat, and chemicals delivery as well. We have an entirely web-based routing and dispatch system and a suite of driver applications, the main application being the one that we use for bulk and package delivery, mostly in the fuel and lubricants industry. We work with a number of route optimization companies that do what we call kind of high-level sophisticated routing, and we'll get in a little bit later into what that means different from at different levels of routing and optimization. And then, as I mentioned, our driver app has it's a single application with workflows driven by the configuration in the system. So in the same application, they can deliver, excuse me, they can deliver a bulk product, they can deliver packaged products, and even on the same order, deliver these. So we also have customization into electronic meters so that we can capture delivered quantities directly from the meter. That's kind of the summary on me, so
Awesome.
I'll pass it to
And
Matthew.
we've worked with a number of routing systems, advanced routing systems where they've used our mobile. Matthew, you want to give us a little bit of background on you? But
Sure.
Doug and I co-founded it, and Matthew has been with us the whole time, but go ahead.
Right.
Yeah.
Hello everybody. My name is Matthew Belk. I've been with the company since its inception back in 2001. I've been primarily responsible for designing and building every generation of our mobile app that we have in the field, dating back to, as Doug mentioned, 2006 on Windows mobile devices, very old legacy devices, up to now, including our cross-platform suite of mobile applications, our primary bulk fuel and lubes delivery app, a 3PL app, a food delivery app for that vertical food service, including sales, kind of a sales assist app that we have, as well as all the truck technology that we install on the trucks to manage the communication and connection to the registers in the back. And now we've decided to move our Windows Forms-based back office application to a pure web environment and starting to add many more features to that, including auto routing, which we're going to talk about today.
Awesome. So again, the purpose of this is slightly different because we don't usually talk about us, but it is to share best practices, talk about real world experiences, and to help you build a better logistics organization. This is both for existing customers as well as new customers. This is going to be recorded. If you have a question, there's a Q&A section. You can put your question in the Q&A, and Charlie will monitor that and make sure we answer it. This is really a discussion, just like we've done with others. The only difference is we'll have a brief period where Doug shows a demo of our auto routing. But other than that, it's really to talk about best practices and help people understand what's involved in auto routing and what that looks like. We've seen it with across our system since we started doing this in 2006. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And at this point, it's really just a discussion point. So let's start with, we already did the BizSpeed intro, but let's start with what is auto routing? Doug, do you want to answer, or Matthew?
Sure, I'll go. Auto routing is basically how you can imagine it is. It's you take the pool of n number of orders, we'll say 100. You take pool of trucks, we'll say 10 trucks, and you basically tell a system to drop all these 100 orders on all my 10 trucks. And hopefully the system will do it in an efficient way so that you get all the orders serviced in time within various constraints. Maybe you have customer service hours that you have to respect. Customers are only open from a certain, they're only able to accept deliveries from certain time windows of the day. You've got drivers that you don't want your drivers to run 14 hours in a day. So you have constraints on the trip time. You have constraints on where the drivers can load their product if they're not loading at your own warehouse. So that's all of what kind of auto routing encompasses, and making sure that when it's all said and done, you get a job back that's got as many orders as possible routed on as many trucks as possible.
And so what's the background? Obviously, we've got a lot of partners, and we're going to talk about the difference, but what's the background and why did BizSpeed build this? How do we answer that?
So we've had a routing engine in our software for quite a while, and some uh, uh, optimization around those routes, but it was purely a manual dispatch system. So the user had to drag orders onto specific routes, assigned to specific trucks, and they had to build those routes individually. And really, the main purpose of an auto routing system is to save that piece of the work so that you get good routes that are efficient, like Matthew explained, but they give you a good starting point for your dispatcher to work from. So they're not spending all that time figuring out which routes to drag orders onto. We sort of take that first level of optimization for the dispatcher, and then you can use that dispatcher's knowledge to deal with the exceptions. So there's always going to be an order that needs to be delivered first because it was missed the previous day, or something that the customers run out and you need to get to them immediately. A dispatching engine is not going to know that, so you still need the dispatchers to handle those exceptions. But really the intent of this is to provide a mechanism for the dispatcher to get a starting point of efficient routes that they can start from each day, and save the time that they would normally spend assembling those routes by hand.
So, so maybe to start off, what I mentioned this, but tell the audience, like, what's our experience working with auto routing? Because we worked with a number of systems. We don't have to go into those systems, but just kind of where those are, and they have been around for a long time, right? So even since we first started, we started with those, right?
Yeah, we've got extensive experience, obviously, since 2006, working with some very sophisticated auto routing systems. And these really are well suited if you have a very complex routing situation. So if you need to take into account axle weights and delivery sequence, so that you reduce particular axle weights, kind of an extreme example, but cases like that, these systems are able to accommodate all those. Most of our customers don't need that. Most of them really don't have that complex of a routing situation. So we wanted to create something that would get a good ways toward what those systems offer, but not without the need to get all the way there. They tend to be complex to set up. The users have to be fairly advanced to operate them. The data setup can be very rigorous on those systems as well.
I think with any system, obviously, and we'll talk about rollouts later on, but what's involved? So just in general, if you're going to set up an auto routing, what does somebody need to do to set up auto routing? Because it's not like you can just turn it on, right?
No, I would say that, you have to have a good handle on the demographics of your fleet for sure. What the capacities are of those. I mean, we talked about axle weights are not as important, but obviously, if you've got a fleet of tank wagons, we need to know how big the compartments are, how much they can hold. We need to know when we can make deliveries to your customers, right? Some customers, some of them may be open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for you to show up, but other customers, based on where they are, they may only be able to accept deliveries from 6 to 8 in the morning and again from 6 to 8 in the evening, just because, their yards, their parking lots are small and they need to have the room for customer cars, right? Um, then there's the product information. It's critical for us to have unit weights and unit volumes, whether they're bulk, densities or, pack unit volumes where, um, a case of a case of something may consume 4 cubic feet, whereas a case of something else may consume 8 cubic feet. And in each of those cases may be wildly different in terms of weight. We need to be able to know that so we can know whether or not we've cubed out or weighted out a truck as we're loading it, as we're specifying how much to carry on it.
Got it. And do you like who is this? Like, who did we build this for? Like, is this like what would be an ideal customer profile? Like, how would you guys look at that? I mean, is somebody, do you look at it? Are we thinking that it's fleet size or more complexity based?
I'd say more complexity based, really around how sophisticated your routing needs are. We try to design something that's easy to use, works with a pretty wide variety of number of trucks at a site, anywhere from a couple of trucks up to a pretty large number. Obviously, you get more efficiencies if you have more trucks to route across, but really something that's a easy to use tool compared to some of the more sophisticated packages.
I would say that if you have, very challenging calendaring or, customers that have very challenging calendars, multiple calendars per customer, a lot of demands on driver capabilities or truck capabilities that may be that may prompt you to think about a much more advanced solution. Like there are some yards, some customer sites can only accommodate a truck that's so long, right, or so big or so tall, because their yard just can't there's no turning radius for a bigger truck. Um, Things like that, I think would maybe tend you to want to think more about a more advanced solution than ours. That's not to say that we won't get there eventually, but it's still a nascent technology for us, and so we're trying to walk before we run.
Got it. So we're going to show what we have, so we will do a demo in just a little bit. But you mentioned, I think it's worth talking a little bit more about data-wise. What are some of the key data things that you need to have in order to set up auto routing? It doesn't matter what system you have, ours included.
Yeah, so obviously customers need to be geocoded. We need to know where the deliveries are going to be made. Um, your fleet vehicles need to be set up, so we need to know how big the compartments are, what the capacities of the compartments are, the weight capacities of the trucks, the volume capacities. Um, Products need to be set up with, like Matthew mentioned, densities, weight, so we know how much space they consume and how much they weigh. So while we build the routes, we know that we're not overloading a compartment and we're not overloading the truck in whole. Those are kind of the big ones. There's always other, really in any routing system, data is the big thing. Clean data is important, especially things like customer addresses. It's pretty common for people to put other things in the customer address fields. And obviously, when you need to geocode an address, then it isn't helpful to know that the customer's phone number or their PO number or something like that. So those kinds of things um, are definitely critical to being able to implement any routing system.
What when should, well, like what do you see as resistance? So I know that's one of the things that from a sales standpoint, but also from an implementation standpoint, when you roll this out, like what are some things that you hear from a dispatch standpoint? And I've got a follow-on question for that too.
Yeah, inevitably, it's going to build different routes than your dispatchers will build to start out. No question about that. The dispatchers are used to taking into account all kinds of things that they know that the system can't possibly know unless you tell it. So if they know that a customer can only be delivered to until a certain time, then that's got to be configured in the system. So pretty common that you'll start to run routes and the dispatcher think, well, that'll never work because this customer needs to be delivered by this time, or this cover can't be delivered before this time. And that's where you've got to get that tribal knowledge out of the dispatcher's head and into the system, and that's where the data configuration is key. But that's kind of the key, the initial resistance point that you'll run into. And then as they get more comfortable and realize that once that data, once their knowledge gets into the system, it's building routes much closer to what they would build, and they'll you frequently even see advantages over routes that they may have built.
And so how do people get over that? How do you get over that where dispatchers don't, their resistance? What have you seen? Because you've seen this a lot. You've done a lot of implementations that involve auto routing. So your personal experience, yeah.
Yeah, it's just it's use. It's helping them understand why the system is coming up with the solution it's coming up with, and where the efficiencies are in what the solution that the system is coming up with. And training obviously is hugely important. They need to understand, how it works so they're using it correctly. If you don't use it correctly, then you may not get optimal results from it as well. So it really just comes down to training and time spent using the system to get comfortable and making sure they know how to go in and update the data when they see a result that they didn't expect, and you can identify why they got that result, then going in and updating the configuration data so that next time around it'll hopefully handle it better.
I know one of the things when you get into advanced routing, and this is not something that we would see, but sometimes they'll send two trucks to one location for an order, and the dispatchers don't agree with that. But the reality is, you eventually can show them, hey, it's more efficient to send two trucks, and you can get more. But those are the kind of things I think I've seen with that.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, so let's jump off. Doug, if you want to just give a quick overview and do a demo of it, just so that people get an idea, then we can go back and ask some more questions, and we'll walk through. Let's see what it looks like. So we've got about 45 minutes, so this will be no more than 15 minutes. If people want a longer demo, go ahead and contact Charlie. But obviously, we are going to talk about rolling this out to our customers as well at the end of this. So.
Share here. Okay, I think everyone should be seeing that. So this is our mobile hub, the web application, and many of you have probably already seen this before. I know we've got some existing customers on here. If you haven't seen it, then Charlie would be happy to arrange to show it to you. So, and I'm not going to get into any kind of other capabilities. So I'll go to the auto routing is a menu option under our dispatch menu. And once I select it, it's going to come up with a screen that's, to start off with, is fairly Spartan, pretty simple. And basically all I need to do is select the day I want to route for. So I'm going to create routes for tomorrow. And then I'll create a new job. And a job is a routing set, I guess is probably the way to put it. So a job could be routing fuel at a specific depot. It could be routing just lubes at a specific depot. It could be routing a specific product at a specific depot. However, you want to approach the routing, and we can create multiple jobs. So if you're routing for 3 depots, you might create 6 different jobs if you're routing for both fuel and lubricants while you're routing. So To create a new job, I'll just click on New Job. And to orient you to this screen here, I've selected a depot of our Atlanta bulk plant. And there's a list of depots that you can select from. It'll be all the depots that are set up in your system. The dates, the first column over here are all of the unrouted orders that need to be routed. So I've got it set up. I've selected a week worth of orders, and we've got some data seeded, so it's the orders are in the past. And then within those orders, I can kind of slice and dice what orders you want to see here. So if I hit the edit search button here, we get some advanced search. So I could add additional depots if I wanted to route from multiple depots simultaneously off the same trucks. Specific order types. So if I want to route only fuel orders or only lubricants orders or transport orders, I can select these here. And then there's some other things we can do around priority orders, specific route zones. If you want to assign route zones to customers, then orders created for those customers will all get tagged with the same route zone. So if you're going, east of your depot, then you can search only for orders that are east of the depot, for example. And then we can also route by product, which is actually the way I'm going to start this one off. And this is just a list of all the products that are found on the unrouted orders that are over here on the left side. So I'm going to go down and I'm actually going to narrow it down quite a bit. I'm only going to do the diesel clear and dyed diesel orders. And if you look over here, you can see that we're starting with 94 total orders, and this is a mixture of fuel and lubricants orders. So once I hit search here, it's going to go through and apply that search criteria. So now it narrowed it down to 81 available orders over here. Once I selected the depot up here in the center panel, then we're seeing all of the fleet vehicles that are assigned to that depot. So we've got 10 total vehicles. One we've got set up as a lubes truck, and the rest are tank wagons. I've deselected the lubes truck since we're only going to route diesel fuel on this. Additionally, back on the order side here, if I want to see what's on these orders, I can click on the little box icon here for the product summary, and it'll give me a quick overview of what's on the order. So this one's got 2,500 gallons of clear diesel and 1,000 gallons of dyed diesel on it. So this can be helpful if you're trying to decide if there are certain orders you want to exclude for one reason or another. You can do that here. So I can go through and individually select to include or exclude orders. I can just blanket select all of them or do all of them and then remove any orders that I don't actually want to route. And the same with the trucks over here. If certain trucks are out of service, you can just deselect it. Or if you want to use it on a different routing job, then you can deselect it and then save it to use there. I'm going to go ahead and select all 9 of these. And you can see the capacities of the truck here. So the volume capacity, the weight capacity, and then the compartment configuration. So I think all these are set up to have 4 bulk compartments and 1 package compartment. So we can put both bulk and packaged products on here. The right column has the profile that I want to use for this job. So it's going to be the start date is today's date. I can move that forward to make it the 11th. The earliest starting time is the earliest I want to schedule routes to start at. I'll say it's set for 6. You can change this to any other time. The max work hours is the constraint we want to use. We don't want to create routes that are longer than this time. And then the max loads is the number of times we want to be able to load the truck. So I'm going to set this to 3. And then I'll have to pick the terminals that we load from. So these are the terminals that we've set up that are associated with the Atlanta bulk plant depot. And we can set up multiples. We can do, I think this looks like it's set to a maximum of 2 loads. So 1 load and then 1 reload during the route. And then we can set it up to optimize by speed. So fastest, distance, shortest, and conversion rate is a calculation of the cost of the route. So it gives us an indication of if you want to optimize by the cheapest routes or the lowest cost routes, then you can also select that as well. I'm going to leave it on speed. And then down here at the bottom, balanced trips will we'll try to create roughly balanced duration on the trips. So these should all come out to be roughly the same length of time. You can decide whether you want to use all trucks. So if I wanted to schedule the orders across all of these trucks, I would click that. If you want to see if you can get by with fewer trucks, then you would leave that unchecked. And if the system is able to, it will allocate the orders to fewer than the available trucks if it can. The perform route optimization is some kind of additional optimization that you have the option to do. This is actually going to go away. This will just all be incorporated into the base job. And then if you want to always fill your bulk compartments regardless of the quantities that are on the orders that are available, then we can also set this up so that it'll plan loads to fill the compartments. So this is the setup. So based on the filter for the orders I selected, the trucks I want to route for, and then the parameters I want to route around, then I can go ahead and start this job. Now this will take a little while to run. Obviously, multi-compartment routing is a pretty complex task. So it'll run. It started running. You'll see up here, it'll say it's adding orders to route. And this is all happening in the background. We've still got all of our unrouted orders displayed. It's still in the process as long as it says adding orders to route, even though it cleared this screen out. It's still building routes. It's got an initial snapshot of what it thinks they'll look like roughly for distance and duration. But you can see that none of the weights or volumes are populated yet. So it's still working. And rather than sit here and watch this thing count, I'm going to go back and look at one that I had built for today and show you what the routing solution will look like once it's done. So that's the one that's still in process. This is one that I had done earlier. Similar set of routes, similar set of orders that were planned on the same set of trucks we have as well. So orientation on this screen, these are the routes that have been planned. And you can see for each one, the truck is planned for, the number of orders, the number of loads, and then the weight and volumes that are planned for the route. And then the distance, total distance for the route, and then the estimated duration based on the setup. So this is going to take into account prep time. So there's a time on site to prep for making a delivery. And then for each truck, we'll set up the pump rate capacities for the truck. So depending on the pump that's on your truck, we'll set up different rates. And then depending on the quantities that are planned, we'll calculate the expected duration for making those deliveries. So all of that is taken into account in the estimated duration. And you can see that
like on this one, Doug, I mean, it pretty much made everything. I think this is what you're getting to. So everything was close to 10 hours, but not over.
Yeah. So it did a pretty good job balancing. Looks like we're anywhere from 7.5 to 9.5 hours, just right at 10 hours, actually, here on the bottom one. From here, all of the routes and orders are plotted on the right. Can get a little hard to see if there are a lot of orders. I think there were 81 orders, if I'm not mistaken, in this solution. So I can show only expanded routes and take off the orders that weren't routed. And I'll talk about why they weren't routed and how we know why they weren't routed below. So expanded routes over here for each route, there's a little icon. I can click on that and expand that route to see the details of the route. So this one has one load at the Atlanta bulk plant, shows the start time, which we set to 6 a.m. for our default start time. Um, the the planned weight versus the total weight capacity of the truck, the planned volume versus the total planned volume capacity on the truck. There's no packaged product on this truck, but if there had been, then it would show us the similar number for that. We've got 5 orders on here, and you can see here the estimated time of arrival and delivery duration for each of those orders. And if I want to see more detail about what's on those orders, then I can click on the product summary here. And it'll give me some information here about what was on this order, what's on the truck for the entire route, what compartments we planned those into, and then what the truck configuration looks like. So for each compartment, 1 through 4 are bulk compartments. So we've got a max weight and a max bulk volume for each of those. And the 5th compartment is set up as a packaged compartment. So we just record the weight for that. And then, so down here in the right, these are the orders that did not get routed. So we've got 25 orders that didn't get routed. And for most of these, it looks like nearly all of them, it's because the trip was full. So if I click on one, it'll show that this one had 500 gallons of dyed and 300 gallons of gasoline planned. Worth noting that when I sorted the orders or sliced the orders for what I wanted to route, I picked orders that had those products on it. They can also have other products as well, and that's one of the configuration points that needs to be considered, is how you want to handle routing multiple products to the same customer, whether you want to split those up across multiple orders or keep them all on one order.
Hey, so Doug,
Doug, we got a question that came in.
or
Will
Matt.
this process account for retain, or does it assume empty trucks when you're starting?
For now, it assumes empty trucks, and the reason for that is that we don't really know what the retain is going to be. Because if you're routing and the trucks are still on the road, then we don't really have a good basis for knowing what they're going to come back with. So if the trucks are already all at the deep, yeah, I would say in general we just assume an empty truck.
Um, so you'll see the reason code over here, why they weren't added. Trips were full. There were a couple down here. I mean, we just ran out of truck space to put all the orders on. They just didn't fit on all the trucks. Some of these does not fit on any vehicle. I think these are, this is a 5,000 gallon dyed order, and none of the trucks have a 5,000 gallon capacity. These were some transport orders that were included. So that's why they are not fitting on the tank wagons in this case. And one other thing that can be useful here, there's a report that you can download that will show across the routes a little bit more. Get rid of that and get the right one up here. A little bit more information about what was planned. It planned a total of 9 trips or routes, routed 83 orders, 10 loads across those 9 trips. And then the average miles per stop is 17.5. So total planned miles across all of the trips is 1190. The total planned time is 82 hours, 52 minutes. And then the average capacity of the bulk assets. So we're able to plan orders for 87% of the capacity on the trucks on average. And then down below for each of those individual 9 trips, it shows the individual statistics for each of them. Some of these were the miles and time we saw on the other screen. I think a useful one here is the bulk capacity used. So you can see that it did a pretty good job of filling the trucks up, anywhere from 77 to 97% of the capacity of the truck being used in this case. And this can be useful if you're looking at multiple scenarios. So like if you wanted to replan this scenario with fewer trucks or more trucks to make the deliveries, then you can see what impact that would have on the percent bulk capacity used on each of those trucks.
There's a couple of questions that we have. Maybe for first one for Matthew, will the system know supplier allocation when loading? Yeah, that's a little.
We don't no, we don't really have any. We have contract management and that kind of those that information is on our roadmap kind of globally, but no, currently we don't have any. We don't keep track of supplier allocation at the
But
terminal.
that's on the roadmap, and that's coming this year at some point. So yeah. And then there's another one. Will there be a report available that will show actual versus projected? We already have that report, so it's in a different format. But yeah, we've got plan versus actual already from a reporting standpoint. So
Yeah.
we've got we're running tight on time. So I don't. Are there other things in here that you'd like to show, Doug, or you want to handle a couple?
The other thing I'll mention is once you found a solution that looks good, so if we like the way it came up with a solution for this route, then I would just say save solution here, and that would move it would create these routes in the route builder in Mobile Hub, and then that's where you would go in and start dealing with any exceptions. So if you knew you had an order you needed to add to a route, or you need to swap an order out because of an emergency or something like that, then that's where the dispatcher would make those changes. So that basically this is giving them, their starting point for getting the orders routed, and then they can deal with the exceptions once it's been put into the route builder, and they can finalize everything.
We have another question. Will the system email customers with the estimated time of delivery or the advanced ship notification after it's finalized and rolled into the route builder as a finished route?
Yes. So once it's in route builder, there's we won't send those notifications out until the dispatcher has reviewed the routes in there and made any other exception changes that need to be made. And then once we call it dispatching the route, that's when we'll queue up notifications to go out to customers. So typically those will go out sometime after all of the route planning is finished, to let customers know what time they should expect their order.
Let's hit a couple of more questions. So, what is challenging, Matthew, if you want to answer this, what's challenging about auto routing with compartments, and why is that a hard problem to solve?
Oh my goodness, there's just so much computation that's involved. I mean, where do you start? And I'm not even the math guy in the company. We have a guy that sits in in his own little cubicle that has figured out who's figuring out all the math. Um, but it's just the number of permutations is astronomical. Once you get into we call them a matrix of stops, from sources and destinations. Once you get into a matrix that's more than 10 by 10, the number of the number of possible combinations of routes that you could potentially have to sift through is just astronomical. So yeah, it's a very, very complex math problem, and that's one reason why traditional, like what we consider AI, like the ChatGPT style LLMs, they're not a good. You can't just pump in 100 orders and 10 trucks and ask ChatGPT to route them. It doesn't work that way. LLMs aren't really good at heavy duty computational things like that. They're great at spotting trends. They're great at sifting through the entire internet, all of the world's knowledge and the history of the world, and coming up with answers to questions. But if those questions are heavily computational, AI is not going to really be not going to help you out a whole lot with that.
But we do have some AI ML background behind this, right? So our algorithm, you want to talk about what algorithms like
Yeah,
machine?
definitely. So, at least for how to distribute products on loads, we use a genetic algorithm, which, not to get too technical, but it takes a proposal, it starts swapping things in and out every generation. Hopefully, it gets a little bit better. Generations that are not better are discarded. So you get a little bit of only the strong survive kind of thing as the routes evolve. As you add orders to them, you keep swapping and swapping and swapping, and over time, with enough swaps like that, you hope to arrive at at an optimal solution. So yeah.
We had one more question in here. What are the criteria used for the conversion type of routing? So speed, distance, or conversion?
Well, I'm not sure I completely understand the question, but the conversion rate is essentially it's cost based. So if you assign a dollars per mile operating cost to your trucks and a dollars per hour kind of planning cost to your drivers, it'll it'll attempt to kind of combine those two into one blended number and come up with we can come up with the shortest route, we can come out with the fastest route, and we can come up with the cheapest route. Is essentially you can kind of think of it in those three terms.
Got it.
We had one more question too. When wet hosing, will the system know the approximate time it will take the driver to deliver based on the number of units?
Currently, it's all based on the kind of the blended flow rate of the pumps. So if you wanted to kind of build in those delays, like if you have a truck that has a maximum flow rate of however many gallons per minute, 50 gallons per minute, and uh, it's used primarily for wet hosing, then you might want to drop that down by a factor of whatever, 75%, right? So you could build in that sort of truck to truck, uh, moving the hose from truck to truck just by artificially decreasing the max flow rate of the pumps on the truck.
I think part of this question also is, which we've heard before, is do we ever go back and reforecast order times based on historical or the number of units that are there? I don't know how you want to answer that.
I would say that's in my personal roadmap is an ability to, and that would be a great way. That would I think would be a great utilization for AI, right? Is to help us feed information like that, delivery history to customers, including the number of units, the gallons per unit, to figure out, smarter setup times, right? There's a, you know, we've chosen to go from a flow rate standpoint, how fast can you move product versus how long are you typically on site, right? I mean, that's two different ways you can treat that. Um, and I think one way of doing it would be to set the customer setup. We have a way to define what the common setup time is at a customer. You can sort of build in the number of units into that customer service time, that base setup time. Like if you know that you're on a yard that has, 60 trash trucks that you've got to fill, and it takes, roughly, 30 seconds to go between trucks on average, then you could build in an extra 30-minute service time buffer into the regular customer setup time. And you can kind of approximate it that way. You could use that as a proxy for um, the overhead of the unit fills.
Think going on maybe for some of the other technical things, do you want to just give us a general overview of technically how this works? Is this available for on-premise customers? Not that we have very many of those left, but generally, like, how does this work and how does
Sure.
it scale?
So this is decoupled from the regular mobile hub ecosystem. It's a separate set of servers that are running. Our ultimate goal is to make this available publicly. Um, with an AP, we have an API that you make a request to it. Mobile Hub happens to be one of the consumers of that API. So that API handles requests. It publishes a message on a real-time message bus. We have an engine that's running all the time, listening for these messages. When it gets a message, it starts running a job. It posts back, publishes other messages back to the API at different states of the job's completion. And that API uses webhooks to call into the calling system. And we take that information and then use a tool called SignalR. That's a little bit getting in the weeds to update the user interface that you see here on the screen in as near real time as possible. It's all based on .NET. We're a .NET shop, a Microsoft shop in general. So it all uses it's all built on .NET 10, the latest Microsoft tech stack.
We've got a couple of more questions from an interview standpoint, and then I want to make sure we get to any other questions from an open question standpoint. This is more on the rollout, so maybe more on Doug's side, but how are we rolling this out? And so we've got existing customers. What's the process for that, and what skills do they need? But generally, what's our rollout process for this?
Yeah, so for rolling this out, we plan to start rolling out to some early access customers this quarter. We'll work with some of our existing customers on that front, and then make it more generally available in the second quarter. And the rollout process will be for the existing customers, will be building on what's already there data-wise in in Mobile Hub and that you've been using for the route builder. And we'll identify what other data needs to be updated. So anywhere we need to, whether it's product weights and densities or any truck configuration or customer related configuration, we'll identify where those gaps are at and help you come up with a plan for getting those filled in. And then once we get through that, then we can do training and start the rollout. So go live.
What skills does a customer need? Does a customer team need? What do you think they should have, and who should?
I'd say for most people, it's going to be really boils down to some Excel skills for the most part. Really getting some data that you can get into Excel and fill in the data where there's gaps, and then we can re-import that data back into Mobile Hub. Alternately, if your data is already in Mobile Hub, you can go through and update it, on a customer by customer basis or product by product. But obviously, those numbers can get pretty big pretty quick. So it can make more sense just to export everything, update the data in bulk, and then re-upload it. It's not onerous. I wouldn't say it's difficult. It just takes a little bit of time to go through and verify everything.
And some of that, I think, especially obviously we have geocoding services and we'll automatically geocode things, but a lot of it I think is around customer information, right? Like what their delivery windows are, how long the setup is for each customer. So
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, if you want to do cost-based accounting or cost-based routes, then obviously we need to know what the operational costs of the trucks are and the cost of drivers and things like that as well.
yeah. And they don't have to be exact, right? It's for planning purposes, right?
Right. Yeah. The goal is to get a good solution. I'd say, somewhere between a good and a great solution. Enemy is the perfect is the enemy of good. So
Yeah.
we don't need to get there. And there are some, obviously very sophisticated routing systems that will get you the extra few percent that's out there. But it's the 80/20 rule applies.
Got it. Well, we're coming up to the end. So if anybody has any questions, raise your hand. Charlie got through a bunch of them. I think 8 of them were answered. If nobody has any, then I always end this with the lightning round. So you can both answer or one answer. But my lightning round bonus questions are, what's the craziest aha moment a customer shared after go live? That's obviously we haven't rolled out the auto routing, so this is just in general. But what's the craziest aha moment a customer had for either one of you?
I'd say we had one customer. We were going live first day. Literally within the first 2 hours of go live, a driver called in and said, "Hey, I'm trying to make this delivery. They had they had the nozzle in the tank ready to deliver, and it won't let me start this order. It says I'm outside the geofence," meaning they were outside the customer location. And they called back and couldn't start the order. And obviously in Mobile Hub, there's some things we have in place to prevent delivering at the wrong customer. And after a little bit of research, they figured out that sure enough, the guy was at the wrong customer and was about to make a delivery into a tank for a customer that didn't even have an order for it. So kind of surprising that it happened that quickly, but wasn't the first time something like that had happened for them.
What's one feature that most surprises customers?
I would say the visibility on the route, the dispatch dashboard, and being able to see exactly what the status of every route is, kind of summarized on one screen. You can see where the trucks are at. You can see what's delivered, what's not delivered, what orders look like they're going to be behind schedule for delivery and potentially missed, and just having that visibility, especially for somebody who's coming off of a paper system, that can be a pretty big leap forward and pretty exciting.
And we didn't talk about AI that much in here, even though we've got AI powering our engine and some other areas. But if you could snap your fingers and instantly add either one of you one AI capability, what would it be?
I would I would probably say leveraging its ability to spot trends. I think it'd be great if I'd love to have an AI agent that could be constantly monitoring trips in progress and being much more proactive about alerting. It could spot trends about, whether or not a driver is doing the right thing in the right order or how close he is how in jeopardy orders are, downstream orders are to being late or to being delayed, so we can be more proactive to dispatchers about notifying them that, hey, you might want to, get on somebody to hop to it, or reroute orders, right? If you had to pull orders off of a route because the driver just isn't, he got waylaid at a stop, right? Anything like that that would be more proactive to help us. I think I would probably add that.
We've got a couple other
We,
questions in here.
yeah.
Can you route off of the most efficient driver, or can you route off of drivers instead of trucks? I think that's a coming feature, right?
Yeah, the routing off of drivers, at least adding drivers to the pool of assets that we're combining, right? Orders, trucks, and drivers is definitely part of it. Um, I would say we don't really have a way of storing a driver's efficiency yet. To and I'm not really sure what the rules that we would use to govern which driver gets assigned to which trucks or which routes. Um, I'm certainly open to suggestions as to you know,
I think
how
that's
how you may do that right now,
yeah,
and how we could encapsulate that knowledge. That's a great example of the tribal knowledge that we're trying to figure out how to encapsulate, but that all also seems to me to be very subjective and fuzzy and hard to put into a computational format, right? Where we could leverage it.
yeah, we've seen that. So that'd be an example of where you get, we don't have that in there now, but that'd be an example of where you get advanced routing, where you can separate the planning cost from the actual cost. In advanced routing systems, you can say that you can plan for drivers because you don't want to have the most expensive driver. They'll end up not getting routes, and so you can set the driver planning cost all at the same, and then put the more experienced driver in there. But those are where you separate the plan from the actual. That'd be an example, I think, of where you'd see some advanced routing solutions if you feel like you need to have that. So obviously, we'll continue developing ours, but I don't think that's in there right now.
Yeah, we have one more question. Will the delivery times update if the driver is delayed?
We do that as from an operational standpoint. As routes are started in the dispatch dashboard, we definitely will recalculate ETAs based on the RTAs and RTDs of drivers, uh, how they're performing the route during the route. Yeah.
So two more lightning questions. One piece of advice for customers, existing or new customers, what would you give them when they start looking at logistics solutions and routing?
Don't underestimate how hard it is to make your data good.
And then the last one, what's one area you see AI making the biggest impact in petroleum logistics?
Mm, I would say its ability to spot trends, right? If you can derive the right prompts, you can spot. I think you can spot trends very easily, things that are not immediately obvious to a human. Um, that plus its ability to interpret, the computer vision aspect of AI is incredible. I mean, it goes way beyond just traditional OCR like we had, 20 years ago. And so I think being able to use AI to process documents, whether that's, the PDF, an image of a BOL that a driver takes, or um, even a pricing email that we get or that you guys might get from your rack, your suppliers at the rack. They come in all different shapes and sizes and different formats. Being able to write some AI that can kind of standardize all that and then be able to feed it to us.
Yeah, that's good. Well, we're right at the end of the time. I don't see any more questions. This has been good. Hopefully, this has been helpful for people. We will get the recording out. We'll clean up the recording and send it out so that you can watch it afterwards. And you can also share that recording if you want to share the recording. But Matthew, Doug, Charlie, thanks for doing this for the participants. Hopefully, this was good. Hopefully, you guys learned something. If you have questions, you can forward them through Charlie, and Charlie will make sure that we get those questions answered if you have any questions after this. So, and obviously, we're looking forward, I would say, to rolling this out to our customers. That's a big step for us. We've got partners that are routing partners. We are not stepping on their feet. We understand that, they are more advanced than what we do, but our goal, which I think Doug mentioned, was that we are trying to come up with a good route. And then as you get more advanced requirements, then we have multiple, but a couple of really good engines that can handle the more advanced side. But for what we see a lot of customers with, and if they don't have those advanced needs, then this is going to be a great start for them. So thanks for doing this. I appreciate you guys all doing it, and hopefully this has been helpful. Thanks.
Thank you. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye. See you.
Thank you.